Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. We are EBS, your Experience Technology Partner. We specialise in the deployment of Sage Business Management and Microsoft solutions, managed services and secure on-premises and cloud-based infrastructure. We're now in our 44th year. My name is Darren Tolley and I'm one of the account managers here at EBS. Today we are joined by Draycir, who we've partnered with for many years. Most of you will be familiar with Draycir's Spindle Document Management, but there are many more solutions that you may not be familiar with. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Ross Barker, who will take us through some hints and tips which are real time savers, improving processes and ultimately saving your business money. We are recording today's presentation and will make this available to you in the next few days. There are lots of recordings on our YouTube channel. Remember to hit subscribe to receive notifications when we load new videos. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat, or there will be an opportunity at the end of the presentation in the Q&A session. Without further ado, I will pass you over to Ross. Morning, Ross.
Morning, Darren. Morning, all. Thank you for your time this morning and for joining us. And thank you for the introduction as well, Darren. So yeah, as Darren mentioned, I work for Draycir, and we are a long-standing partner of EBS. We've been around ourselves for about 22 years, so not quite the 44 that EBS have, but nonetheless, we're a very sort of long-standing partner of EBS, and very familiar within the Sage 200 marketplace, as you would expect. We've developed many solutions over that time. You will be most commonly recognized with Spindle Document Management. That's the foundation of our business. It has been around for the entirety of our time, but we've added a number of different products to our stack over the years, as you can see on screen. Spindle Document Management, that used to be document distribution only, distributing those documents out, invoices, statements, remittances and the like, but we then added that capture piece, which now form more of a document management solution as a whole. There are some add-ons to document management, most notably our document recognition software that does come with a free approvals tool. That's the ability to automate your purchase invoice process. Let the software read those invoices, post and archive them, or send them off for approval. We've also got Spindle requisitions, which essentially precludes that process, of course, with the generation of those purchase requests. Spindle Self-Serve is our online portal, giving not only your customers but also internal colleagues access to all of that account information in real time, copies of invoices, copies of statements, being able to place orders, check stock, order history, and a number of other points, including a proof of delivery module as well. Spindle Report Scheduler does exactly what it says on the tin. It schedules those reports. If you are reporting out of Sage, be it default reports or custom layouts, you can set those reports to any date, time and frequency. Excel Data Bridge gives you the ability to speed up that process and reduce the kind of the double entry that often occurs, particularly if working from spreadsheets. We all do that throughout the sort of working week, whether that's just through familiarity of Excel or because of the calculations, the formulas that we would use. But what that often means is when we're comfortable with the information in Excel, we've got to go and key it into Sage 200. We don't need to with Excel Data Bridge. One click and that information is populated in Sage. And then we've got Credit Hound, which is our advanced credit control software that essentially takes away all of that administrative burden that sits behind credit control, and communicates to all customers, no matter where those invoices, those transactions sit within your collection path and chase cycle. So that's just a brief overview from a Draycir point of view. But as Darren mentioned, we're here to have a look at our document management piece today. And hopefully we've got a number of users on the call this morning that are either familiar with document distribution or maybe document management. They've got that capture element too. But what we'll run through this morning are just some hints and tips about the software itself. as I mentioned, Spindle has been around since the outset, so 22 years old, which doesn't mean it's gathered dust in the time. It does mean it's a very robust product. But we are adding features and functionality still to this day to Spindle Document Management as the weeks and the months tick by. You may already have a license in place with some of these features are applicable to. So it's really just a case of contacting Darren, getting a sort of quote for any consultancy time, and they can configure that for you. Some features may need an upgrade. So if you are only on the distribution license type, or you are on an older version of Spindle Document Management, may just need an upgrade for you to be able to access those later features and functionality. But it's a very straightforward process for us moving forward. So to kick things off, we'll just have a look at a bit of Spindle document distribution first and foremost. And ultimately, Spindle document distribution gives you the ability, as I mentioned before, to distribute any documents out of Sage 200, be it your invoices, your statements, your remittances, any document that's exiting the building, let's say. And there are a number of things that we can do with document distribution, and that might just be something as simple as updating the email content, i.e. the email that your customer receives, make it look like your own. Use that HTML format, add those colors, logos, branding, library, bring all of that through so it matches your corporate identity and makes your business look much more professional rather than that black and white standard output that you may have had previously. The document, again, we can add multiple overlays, and again, making sure that all of those documents carry the relevant logos, branding, and library. Well, this isn't just a fancy email. Actually, we can enhance that corporate identity across all of the email communication, but also all of those attachments within the email, the documents, and so on and so forth. You can also have different templates for different customers, even within the same operation. So that might be something as simple as your invoice run. You might well be sending out 3,000 invoices, but by coincidence, 1,000 of those invoices are going to your retail customers, 1,000 are going to your construction customers, and 1,000 are going to all other customer type. Well, rather than have to do that operation 3 times, actually we can have a different stationery set, different branding, different logo within each of those operations, but all done with the click of one button. So Spindle will go off, it will send all 3,000 invoices out, but actually it will apply the relevant overlays, branding, library, and logos to each of those 1,000 customer invoices that we used in that scenario a moment ago. I mentioned overlays briefly there as well, and I often refer to Spindle as adding layers of logic to the distribution operation that you have in place. And that might be something as simple as a different overlay for those 3 different categories of customer. In the bottom left-hand corner, you will see I've got a yellow, green, and red overlay. So that might match those retail, construction, and all other customers. So it could just be something as simple as a branding overlay. We can also have additional overlays such as an overdue watermark, for example, or sales copy invoice as an overlay. What that all comes together to look like then is a document that you see in front of you now, where yes, you've got that standardized information, what you would normally find on a statement report, on an invoice report, but we can add the necessary overlay, in this case the yellow backdrop, logo and branding. We can add the overdue watermark should there be overdue invoices in there, and we could even highlight an area to that document, as you can see by the little red highlighted area on that document as well. So if you are looking to emphasize a particular figure, be it a balance, be it an aging bucket or period within that the statement, you can do that. So again, it's just another layer of logic. You might just want to send the statement as is with your branding and your logos and your library, but you might want to do all of those additional things as well. We can also include an additional page within that document type, such as the terms conditions of sale. And again, that can form part of that operation. We can also include new price lists, new brochures, and any other supplementary documentation that's required. As I mentioned a moment ago, not only within that statement can we do all of those things that we've just mentioned by way of overlays, we can also add additional attachments. So rather than just the statement go out, what if we could attach all of the invoices that relate to that statement? So rather than you receive or your customer receives a copy of that statement, but then immediately calls back into the business to ask for copies of invoice 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 that make up that statement. Well, that's extra work for your team to do. They've got to go and find those invoices. They've got to dig them out. They've got to send it through. Not only that, they've had to have the conversation, which again eats into their working day and their productivity. Why don't we let Spindle just very simply attach those invoices with the relevant statement that's been sent out? And again, that's an example that you see in front of you. I did mention about price lists a moment ago and promotional leaflets. Again, that could be promotional leaflets, it could be flyers, it could be price increases. What better way to communicate a new brochure or price list to your customers than attach it as a supplementary attachment with that statement run? In theory, they've got to open that statement because they've got to pay their bill. So it's the perfect time to communicate that there will be a price increase in the next 3 months or that there is a new price list there. But on a more positive note, you could also include those promotional leaflets and flyers as well. Now that can be sent to all invoices or it could be sent to specific customers as well. So again, just going back to that previous example we gave with the retail customer category, construction customer category, and then all other, it might be a promotional flyer that's only applicable to your retail customers. Well, that additional attachment will only go out with the invoices or the statements for that retail customer category. Again, just think of it like an additional layer of logic. You can also improve those internal communications, and this is something that we do internally here at Draycir as well. Again, rather than have to go and find colleagues or communicate to them after you've done a task or a job to keep them in the loop of any information you need, let Spindle do that. And an example of that would be two things really with regard to your sales team. If you're sending out an invoice, why not congratulate the account manager that an invoice has been processed on one of their accounts? I'm sure the sales team would be delighted to know that that's been processed, particularly if they're operating towards a sales target. They can see that their hard work has has come to fruition and that invoice has been processed. Likewise, though, what if the customer has got overdue invoices that sit within that statement example that we just had? Well, why not communicate to the account manager that there are overdue invoices within their particular customer's statement? Because in reality, they are likely to have a better conversation or better relationship with the customer than your accounts team. They can pick up the phone, ascertain if there is any issue or problem with those invoices or paying them, and maybe get to the bottom of that rather than, again, your accounts team or credit control team having to make that call potentially. Let's the sales team understand if they can assist along the way. Again, we can include them in any email communications, as well as any notifications about payments, late payments, and so on. We can also add pay now buttons within our invoices, statements, pro formas. And this is the ability to make instant payment. That payment link can sit within the body of the email. It could also appear as a pay now button within the physical invoice statement or pro forma, giving your customers the ability to make payment faster. If you've got customers that don't typically operate to the working hour, 9 to 5:30, again, they might be a sole trader. They might be on site for the majority of that working day. They might be looking to settle their accounts and pay their invoices out of hours. Well, if they can't get through to you because your offices are closed, actually they've still got the ability to make payment there with those instant payment links as well. And again, we can include those pay now buttons with any of the document types that you mentioned there. And we do have some preferred payment processes where actually we can save you money on those card processing fees. So, you know, often that actually negates the license cost that you paid for Spindle in the first place. Spindle Document Distribution also has its own archive, as you're possibly aware. You know, even if you are using Spindle Document Distribution and only using document distribution, this is something that's probably likely to have been configured for you. But if not, just so you're aware, any document that is distributed via Spindle can be archived in the same operation. That can then be visible against the transaction, the customer, the supplier, and should they be using Spindle self-serve, as I very briefly mentioned at the beginning, that would give you a full list as a customer of all of your invoices, your statements, and you've got a copy of those documents there as well. You'd also have access to the external document search tool. So for your internal colleagues that maybe don't use Sage 200, there is a document search tool, which essentially is an electronic filing cabinet. You can type in a keyword, be it your customer name or actually a sales order number, for example, and it will pull through all of the documents that you've got archived for that particular customer or transaction. You can then use your filters to operate between them. And it becomes a really useful tool in any kind of audit that you might be undertaking. So that's a bit of an overview from a document distribution point of view. As I say, some of that will be familiar to some of you on the call this morning. You might be doing bits of that, all of that, or actually some of those things you were not quite aware of. If it is the latter, again, Darren and the team could certainly help you with setting that up. Any questions just before we move forward to the capture element of document management, Darren, or are we okay?
Got one question about the pay now, and I don't know whether you'll cover this off.
Okay.
You know, further in is I'm familiar with the Pay Them portal.
Yeah.
Is that something you're going to talk about, or is that or not, basically?
Yeah, so we as well as those pay now buttons that we've just referred to there that can obviously sit within those documents, invoices, statements, pro formas, what, you know, the body of the email. You would also have the ability now to access what we refer to simply as the Pay Them portal. So historically, that's where the story ended. The document went out with the button on it, and that's pretty much it. Until those monies were cleared in your accounts, that's it. That was the story. We've now got the Pay Them portal, which is a portal that you can see all of those payment requests that have gone out. So any document that goes out with a Pay Now button or payment link in it, you can see that. You've got a full reference point. It will update as those payments are being made. So if you've got one of those customers, I used an example as a sole trader, maybe makes payment at 9 p.m. Well, actually, if you come back into the office first thing the following morning, you will see that payment request has got an updated status of paid or part paid or failed to pay, for example. You would also then have access to a number of other pieces of information within the Pay Them portal, which we can touch on in a moment. We can have a quick look after we've gone through the capture element and just show you what that looks like. And of course, if there are any requests for any private demonstrations on that, because we'll be getting into the kind of the detail of your payments and what you can expect, of course, just let you know, Darren, afterwards, and we can pick up on that call afterwards, I'm sure. So if that was the only question so far, we'll kind of move forward because I'm conscious of time this morning. So let's have a look at the capture element that forms part of document management. So as I said, we can archive any document that is sent out via Spindle, we can also do the same for those documents coming in. There are different ways to archive those documents. It might be that you've received an email that's got an attachment to it. Let's say it's a purchase order. Dear Darren, please proceed with this order. By the way, here's a copy of our PO. You can just very simply drag and drop that document into the document portal, and it will archive it against that transaction. It's then searchable for you through that search tool that I mentioned a moment ago, or very simply visible against the transaction and the customer within Sage 200. You can drag and drop that from an email. You can drag and drop it from an attachment. You can actually drag the email into the portal as well. So if there's a particularly important information or a note in there that you deem would be useful to be referenceable in the future, of course, you've got access and visibility of that as well. You can also scan in hard copies, and that might be becoming less familiar for some of you on the call, i.e. receiving hard copies in, but ultimately there are still those circumstances where it occurs, and you can scan those hard copies in, and again, same principle, it can archive that document against the relevant transaction and customer account. You can also take photos, and I'm sure we've all had on the call this morning deliveries where the driver has asked to take a photo of the goods at the door, and it might be something as simple as that. It might also be that there are damaged goods. It might be that you've got completed works. There could be a number of reasons why you want to capture something in photo format and archive that against the transaction as well, be it evidence-based or be it the fact that you've completed a particular operation that your customer is paying for. Again, you have the ability to do that and archive that format as well. You do have the ability to scan paper documents in, and we just touched on there a moment ago, scanning those hard copies in, but we can go one step further than that and use our barcoding technology. Now that's perfect for your picking list and your proof of deliveries, because this is where Spindle Document Management really earns its money. Because when you are printing out a picking list or sending a picking list down to your shop floor, that can include a pre-printed barcode. Now, of course, once your colleagues have been around the facility and picked the items, they can just very simply then drop that document onto the scanner, and because there's that pre-printed barcode, it can then archive that document again against the transaction. So you've then not only got your colleague's signature on there, but it's also archived and referenceable, more importantly, for future reference. So if there's ever a discrepancy in terms of those goods and what was actually placed on the van for delivery, you've got all of that evidence there for you as well. And likewise with your proof of delivery, if you are doing your own deliveries, we can pre-print a barcode on that proof of delivery paperwork. They go out with your driver, whether you're still taking a physical customer signature, for example. And again, once those proof of deliveries come back into the business at the end of the day or the end of your driver's route, they are just simply popped on the scanner, and they will then be archived against that transaction and customer account as well. So you've got all of those touch points that you need, even in hard copy, archived and searchable and referenceable for you moving forward. You may choose to actually print a barcode out as well. So rather than it being pre-printed onto that document, again, you might have a little Dymo label printer on your desk where you have received those goods. Well, actually, we want to print a sticky note out for that document, or it might be for your purchase invoice. It might be a case of printing that sticky label out and sticking it onto a physical document. Again, it can work in the same way. So it might just be a very random document. Of course, it could be GRN or purchase ledger invoices, as we said just a moment ago. Those captured documents can also be sent out with any communication. So it might well be that that captured proof of delivery that has come back into the business, it's got your customer signature on there. Well, when you send out your invoice, we can send that proof of delivery paperwork with that email, because you get a number of customers. I'm sure there will be some examples in this session where your customers are not willing to pay that invoice until they've received that proof of delivery. Now, again, that would be another operation. It's another job for somebody in the business to do. But we can have Spindle configured. So very, very simply, when you invoice your customers, and it could be one of those retail category, one of those construction category, or all other. Okay, we used the example before of 1,000 invoices for each category, didn't we? Well, let's say every one of those 1,000 retail customer invoices has got a proof of delivery, and all of those customers require a copy of the proof of delivery to be able to pay that invoice. Well, now you can see where that becomes quite an administrative headache for your accounts team, because they've then got to go and locate each one of those proof of deliveries and attach it to the email. They've then got to then send that email out manually. Let Spindle do that job. So again, within the same click of one button, Spindle can go away. It can send out all 1,000 of those invoices, but it can go and grab a copy of the captured proof of delivery that's already been archived to form part of that invoice. So again, you can see how Spindle Document Management can work both from a distribution and capture point of view, and vice versa. It might not just be a proof of delivery, of course. It could be a certificate of conformity, or it could be that photo of the finished work, i.e. I've given you an example there of the proof of delivery, but it could be that with your invoice, you also want to attach that photo of the finished work with the invoice. So again, the customer is in no doubt what they're paying for, and of course happy to pay because they can see that visual of the completed works and then happy to pay their bill. Spindle Document Capture also has that app, as I mentioned a moment ago, to be able to capture those photos. That's available on iOS and Android devices. It's free. So as part of your Spindle Document Management license, you have access for 250 licenses. So again, any of those Spindle Document Management users would have access to the mobile capture app as well. So there's no additional cost there for you. Again, just some other examples. I think we've touched on a few of these already. Finished goods, finished product, loaded vehicles, damaged goods from either the customer or supplier, for example. Again, there are a number of of examples there. I did mention at the beginning that we do have a number of add-ons for Spindle Document Management as well, and we're actually taking that capture element one step further and giving you the ability to automate that process using our OCR engine. So any of those purchase invoices that you're receiving at the moment, you might be quite happy to capture them manually and just very simply archive a copy of the purchase invoice against the relevant supplier account, but you've still got to key in that information. If you did want to enhance that process with our Spindle purchase invoice recognition module, then this would give you the ability to still capture that purchase invoice as it comes in, but there will be no need for you to enter that data manually, because as you drag the document into the document portal, or it can be emailed directly in, by the way, from your supplier, the software is reading that document and it will populate the information that's required and post and archive that invoice, subject to there being kind of no discrepancy or anything that requires your verification. It will also include a free approvals tool. So you might have thought, as I was explaining that a moment ago, well, we'd like to see it, or we'd very much like to just approve that before it's posted and archived. That's absolutely fine. And we often use an example of, let's say, value. You've received a purchase invoice from one of your suppliers by email. You've very simply dragged it into the document portal. That's it. No manual entry, no data entry at all. Let the software read that invoice and do what it's about to do, which would be to post and archive it. But if it is of a particular value, let's say it was of £10,000, and you've configured an approval workflow that said for all invoices over £10,000, it needs approval from Darren. At which point you would have a status in the document portal to say sent for approval. Darren would receive an email to say, Darren, there's an invoice awaiting your approval. He can log in to the approvals tool either by desktop or mobile app. He can see a copy of that invoice where he can then make his decision to approve or reject it. Upon approving it, you've guessed it, that document is then posted and archived, but also a copy of that document is then archived against that supplier account or against the purchase order as well. So it's visible within Sage 200 as well. So again, there's that flow of documentation all the way through it, be it a distributed document, be it a captured document, either it's through the OCR engine or captured and forms part of that document management solution. Just a very brief overview of some of the points that we just touched on. So we've looked at Spindle Document Management this morning, both the distribution and capture element. We've touched on the document recognition piece as well. That's an extension of document management, including the approvals tool. We very briefly mentioned Spindle self-serve because that gives your customers and internal staff the ability to see all of those documents that have been archived as part of that document management process. We're not here to see anything else this morning, but if there is any requirement for a one-to-one demo of any of the solutions that you see in front of you now, do reach out to Darren or myself, and we'd be more than happy to go through either the solutions that we've been through this morning in a little bit more detail with your current processes in mind, or alternatively, any of those other solutions. That was it from me by way of kind of hints and tips, because I'm conscious of time and do like to stick to the schedule that we had. But were there any other questions? I don't know if anything else has come through at all, Darren.
Yeah. So Ross, I mean, if you could just show us something about the Pay Then portal, because it's quite excited by this in a lot of respects, particularly the new Draycir sort of pay options. I know quite a number of our customers are using things like Opayo and Worldpay and whatever.
Yeah.
But the total processing sort of speed of payment and the ability to see everything sort of within the portal is I can't imagine that any customer that takes payments in this way wouldn't want more information.
Absolutely right, Darren, and it's certainly proving to be a very popular update that we've made, or the team have made. That's the royal we. I don't get involved with the technical element to that. But if I just use a quick example of what we've been through this morning, and show you what those attachments can look like, and then we'll have a look at that Pay Now button if I've still got a few minutes, Darren, if that's okay. So I put an order through, sales order processing. Again, I've acknowledged that order. I've got the sales order acknowledgement attachment here. And again, on the basis that I'd captured that purchase order coming into the business, I've decided to attach that along with my order acknowledgement. Again, so that's where that distribution and capture element are really working hand in hand. And that works particularly well if you are receiving a large number of orders from the same customer, because rather than be acknowledging lots of orders and they might be losing track of which order relates to which PO, well, actually, I can attach the PO that they originally sent me. And again, that's not another job for me to do, because Spindle goes and grabs that as part of the sales order acknowledgement. Again, with regards to the picking list example, and again, we had those pre-printed barcodes, didn't we? Again, that can sit within the picking list documentation. So when that document is printed out on the shop floor and your colleagues have picked all of the goods, they've signed for that document, they can very simply drop that hard copy onto the scanner, and that will be archived as part of that process we touched on a moment ago. And that would be the same process with the picking list, sorry, the proof of delivery rather. Again, it's that pre-printed barcode. I've then got the invoice example that we had previously. So here's that invoice order. Now you will notice I have got a second, just very, very quickly before I click onto those Pay Now details, I've actually got that secondary communication there, that internal communication that we mentioned a few minutes ago. In this case, we've sent out an invoice. So why not let your sales account manager know that an invoice has been processed? And in this case, give them a well done and let Phil know an order has been processed. Now, that would be another job for your team to do, wouldn't it? Typically. But again, when Spindle is sending out an invoice, it can recognize that this is the account manager for that invoice and do two jobs in one go. Of course, we've got Spindle doing about 25 different jobs in this example, but again, just an example for you to see that internal communication. Now, you'll notice here, I've actually got a Pay Now hyperlink within the body of the email, or I could actually include that Pay Now button within the invoice. It's really up to you as a business which one you prefer. So again, here's the order that I put through this morning. Reference EBS, as you can see there, and we've got the 4 cookers in this case. If I just scroll down, we've got another example of that additional overlay, i.e. the additional terms condition, that page 2, that we can include within any of the invoices that Spindle sends. And then we've got that Pay Now button. Upon clicking that Pay Now button, it will open up that payment window where I can see my details, and I can also take those next steps to make payment, as you can see here. Now, I can also view a copy of the document because Spindle has sent it out. Now, you might be thinking, why do I need to see a copy of the document there, Ross? I've just clicked on the Pay Now button in the document, and you would be absolutely right. But actually, this becomes really useful if you are sending out a statement, because of course a statement might have 5, 6, 7, 8 invoices that form part of it. And actually, you might have ordered those goods 3 weeks ago, or 4 weeks ago, or 6 weeks ago. So just being able to see the document that relates to that specific invoice in that statement example would of course be really quite useful. Now I can make payment against that, and it will update the details in the Pay Them portal, which, as Darren said, is our newest feature. Now this is the Pay Them portal which you would use internally. Not going to go through all of these options this morning, but again, if you want to have a one-to-one conversation, we can do, and Darren will arrange that. But I can see all of those payment requests, and again, if I just click into the payment request, there's that request for payment for £1,439, as you can see. That relates to the payment window that we have just opened a few seconds ago. Again, it's currently an open payment because there's no payment being made against it. But if I just click into that payment request, I've got all the additional information that I would require. Again, so if I get any queries regards that, I've got that information. I can also copy that payment link as well. So if at any point you're in a conversation with the customer, they haven't got a copy of the invoice, but they want to pay their bill, they might need to settle their account before any further goods are shipped. Or you could just copy that link and send it through to them by secure email if that's something that you wanted to do. In fact, let's click onto this particular payment window here, and we can make payment. In fact, I'll do just one update before we do that. So I've got the information here, as you can see, full list of those payment transactions, i.e. any payments that have already been made. And again, you'll see that whether they've been manually allocated or auto-allocated. Auto-allocated will be through the new reconciler feature, which we are just about to launch, which essentially can reconcile those payments back into Sage 200 automatically. You've also got all the information regards those transactions. So if I was to click into this particular transaction here, for example, for Abbey Retail, I can see all of the information about the transaction. There was a settlement offer on this particular transaction of 1% if paid before the 1st of March. There is a payment allocation, as you can see here, with a discount amount of £6.11, and I've got all of my payment transaction references here. But I can also see a copy of the original invoice as well. So I'm not having to go hunting for a copy of that should I need it, or should I need to reference it. I did touch on settlement there. We do have the ability to include settlement discounts and late payment fees. Late payment fees, of course, would be applicable to your credit control process more often than not. That might be if paid within 30 days, the invoice is as is. But any payments that are 30 days or 45 days, overdue, incur a 1% late payment charge, for example. But we also have the ability to include settlement discounts. And again, that might be against a category of customer across the board, or it might be on the individual transaction as well. And again, if I just get rid of these details so we're not searching for anything specifically, let's take our transaction from this morning, from the 6th of June, as you can see here. Now I can put a settlement discount on this, so let's have a settlement discount. We'll say it's a percentage settlement discount, and this might not be applicable to all of you on the call, which is why I'll just whiz through this one very quickly, but I'll just reference this as test. And we'll say this is valid until the 7th, and we'll include a 2% discount in there. We've now got a settlement discount on that transaction, okay? If I pull through my payment request, again, we can see that's all there. If I just go back into my payment request and refresh my screen, you can now see that 1439 has now got a 2% discount on it if paid before the 7th of June. It's updated the amount due, 1411 and 10 pence. I can then take the next steps to make payment. If I've paid by card previously, my card details are stored. We are just about to launch open banking as a secondary payment method. Direct debit payments will be coming in due course. Once I've made payment as a customer, I've then got my payment reference transaction details. I can print this page or I can save it, as you might expect. If I click back into the portal, and of course this is my internally, I can see that payment has now been fully paid, as you can see there. And again, all of that information then flows through for me. That would also then update my dashboard with my most recent successful payments of 1411 and 10 pence. So that just again just shows you how we've got that story covered from the order being received to capturing a purchase order, to acknowledging the order, potentially sending back the PO as a reference point. We're sending down the picking list to our shop floor with a pre-printed barcode. That means that document can be archived. We're dispatching the goods to the customer and letting them know. Another distributed document. We can also send the proof of delivery paperwork down to the shop floor, again with a pre-printed barcode. That can then be archived as it comes back in. Because it's been archived when it comes back in, when we do distribute the invoice, we can attach a copy of that proof of delivery paperwork should you want to, or any of those photo examples or any other document type examples we had. Customer receives the invoice. It can include the pay now buttons and the payment links as we've just clicked on, and we can just take steps to make payment, and you have got full visibility of all of that process as I've hopefully just shown you in those last few minutes. And I promise that's it from me this morning, because I've chewed your ears off quite a lot, unless of course there were any other questions that have come through at all, Dan.
No, we've got no other questions. That was great. Thanks for doing that, Ross, and thanks for everyone for watching. We do webinars quite regularly, and there are some other Draycir webinars on our YouTube channel. Encourage you perhaps to look at things like Credit Hound, and we do, I think, have one on invoice recognition as well. So anything that Ross has referred to, we've probably got a video for it that you can go and have a look at. Thanks, Ross, again, and thanks everyone, and we'll see you again soon.